Traditionally speaking, parents get told that they should limit the amount of screen time they put in front of their kids, be it the ages 2, 3, 4, 5. But that might not necessarily be the entire story. There's new research out this week from Edith Cowan University that suggests that particularly things like iPads and screens can play a really important role in preparing kids for school, where increasingly things like computers and iPads are a really essential part of the educational mix. So we have Nick Healy here from 2SER. He's also a technology writer alongside Ariel Bogle, the ABC's new online technology reporter.
Indeed.
Very fancy. Ariel, walk me through what the research says.
It's a really interesting topic because, as you mentioned, parents are always getting pulled this way and that when it comes to just how much screen time to give their kids. But a researcher from Edith Cowan University over in Perth, Donald Holloway, has talked about this concept called the app gap. So this is basically the idea that kids are turning up at primary school with really very different levels of fluency with technology. So some parents are allowing their kids a lot of time on iPads or iPhones, say, so their kids are really sort of familiar with the product, play a lot of games, whether educational games or otherwise, and some kids don't have that time or they don't have access because of economic reasons. So this idea of the app gap is one that a lot of schools are now having to deal with.
The last couple of weeks, I've been filming a doco for SBS about resilience in kids, and as a result, I've been spending a lot of time in primary schools for work, and it's really notable how, particularly with primary school kids aged kind of year 3, year 4, iPads play a huge role in the classroom these days. And the thing that struck out to me is that there is a sort of an inherent kind of gap if kids can't necessarily afford iPads and things like that in their home, that the kids that come into school and can only access them at school are at a sort of digital literacy disadvantage, Nick Healy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always think back to my primary school, so being older than anyone in this room by a
The year
significant
was
amount.
1992.
It was quite some time ago. And shout out to Pleasant Heights Primary School. Go you. We were part in year 3 of a bit of a state government education department experiment. We were trooped out to the Wollongong Uni Computer Lab to just familiarise ourselves with computers at that age. And I think without something like that, I might have actually arrived at a bit of a disadvantage because, you know, I'm not kidding. I was still handwriting. It was still okay to handwrite university essays when I was finishing my first year of university because computers were so rare.
So in terms of what has come out of this new research, there's been some recommendations to change the guidelines around what we tell parents, particularly of toddlers aged sort of 3 up to 5 and 6. Is there an indication of how we should kind of recalibrate the way we approach screen time for kids?
I do feel really bad for parents on this point because they get so much conflicting information. In Australia, the Department of Health, I think, recommends that kids under 2 get no screen time at all, between 2 and 5, maybe about 1 hour, and then maybe 5 to 18, 2 hours. I do very small amounts, and
Is
definitely
this per day or like per week?
Yeah,
Because if it's per day, I'm doing fine. If it's per week, maybe overdoing it a bit.
Yeah, either way, I feel like these sort of strict 1 hour, 2 hour segments are quite unrealistic. If you're around kids, they're definitely on screens more than that. And actually in the US, the big academy over there of pediatric researchers decided to abandon those sort of strict guidelines and suggest more constructive ways of thinking about screen time. So it's okay if your kid is playing a game online, if it's educational, if you're sitting there with them, interacting with them and guiding them through it, if you're using screens so that your kid can talk to their grandparents overseas. You know, I don't think technology use or screen time can be in the bad basket or the wholly good basket. It has to be a sort of negotiated space between parents and kids.
There's been tech wowserism, you know, and we used to talk about when I was a kid. Yeah,
Shocking that there's
Shocking.
tech
Yeah,
wowserism.
your eyes will turn square if you watch too much television. Kids need to turn off the TV. There used to be fear about, I used to get criticised for reading too much. Put the book down and go outside.
For the record, if you watch too much TV as a kid, you know what happens? You grow up to become a television producer like me. It's not the worst thing in the world, right?
So there's an interesting research from Western Sydney University. There's an academic called Joanne Orlando, and when I worked with her on a piece of the conversation about this, it really struck me because she was talking about how parents are using tech as a bargaining chip. So beyond just giving your kids screens or not, there's this extra level of tension when, as Nick pointed out, you use it just to give yourself some time off, but also when you use it as a punishment or reward, you know.
Damn it.
Do your homework.
Terrible.
But she was pointing out that if you can, not to put more pressure on the parents, but if you can start this dialogue early and make sure you have a good relationship with your kids around tech, it'll be really important when they're older and teenagers and they might come across stuff online that makes them uncomfortable? Cyberbullying, are they coming across extra violent or sexual content? You want them to be able to come to you and talk about it.
Yeah.
So if you make tech punishment or reward, or you start taking like the iPhone off them if they talk back to you and use it in that way, you're sort of creating tech as a very complicated part of your relationship with your kid.
It's a really interesting point. Exactly. Like if you've made technology some kind of shining, reward or punishment, no one's going to want to come and have an honest conversation with you about what they're saying or what they're doing. I actually hadn't thought of that angle. I mean, I was thinking more you end up like me in adulthood where technology becomes a reward again. Get your freelance writing done. You can have 2 hours in Assassin's Creed. It's okay.
I think we all do that.
All right, there is lots more of this in the podcast of Download This Show, including in the United States, they have just given the okay to start testing electronic pills. So when you take your medication, it gives off an electronic signal. Why? What is the point of that? Podcast. Find it now. Download the show. See you guys.